Welcome to the speaker series on a shot glass of recovery. This podcast is a place for real stories, honest conversations, and recovery lived one day at a time. The views and opinions shared here are simply our own personal experiences. We do not speak for or represent Alcoholics Anonymous as a whole.
You get a house, you get a car, then you start thinking that's all you are, but you don't know the truth. So let me spell it out for you. Now I got your attention, now there's a start. Now sit and listen to my favorite part. Life's been giving us some clues. The answer lies inside of you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Heather, and I'm an alcoholic. I just want to thank everyone for being here. Thank you, Heather, for asking me to speak. My story, I guess, what happened, what it's like. I'm originally from Toronto. I was born and raised in Toronto. I lived in Toronto probably until I was about 27, and then I moved out just to the outskirts of Cobourg, Peterborough area on Rice Lake for 10 years before I moved out to Cape Breton. I live in Cape Breton now. I live off grid. Life is very different than Toronto, so it's very interesting living off grid, I must say. Didn't expect that to happen to me in my sobriety. Lots of things have changed. I was born in the 80s. I'm going to share this because it's important, and it's important to understand about what happened. Things weren't sunshine and lollipops for me when I was a kid. You know, my mother's boyfriend molested me when I was a little girl, and I was told bad things would happen to my mom and my sister if I ever told anybody. So I didn't ever speak about it until I was in my late teens, early 20s. And my father's a retired police officer, and so is my stepmother. And when I was a kid, my dad used to print out my boyfriend's criminal backgrounds if they had any. And anyways, when I was a little girl, my mom started dating, and my dad would find out the name of the guys and print their backgrounds. And he had pre-warned my mom about this gentleman, and I didn't find out about any of that till I was in my 20s. So when I was really young, I hid a lot of things. I was really depressed and sad. I ate a lot. I developed an eating disorder. And then when I hit teenager, I switched to drugs. And, I'd sell myself because I have no self-worth, It was pretty bad. The drugs were a lot. It was like the rave scenes, a lot of ecstasy, MDMA, and coke. And then, I dabble in some alcohol here and there. But the alcohol really came out in my early 20s, late 1920. It started to get there. By the time I was 23, I was a full-blown alcoholic, and I didn't really know it. Just everybody around me knew it. And, I ended up going to college. I became a paralegal. You know, things weren't the greatest. Some stuff happened, and I just couldn't get my life together. An incident happened with a sexual assault case when I was a paralegal, and I defended the person. I had a chip on my shoulder. I defended the person and ended up helping get him off. And then they repeated again. And I didn't have a non-biased opinion anymore. So I couldn't work in that field anymore because, it's just I had a non-biased opinion. You can't defend somebody when you're like that. So my alcoholism really exploded at that point. I was I was switched and I was working in a bar. I thought that was great. This was before they had readers on your drafts and readers for they just had scales for alcohol. And I was watering down. I was drinking at work all the time. When I first started drinking, I was like, oh, I'm not that bad. I only drink at night when I get home from work. At the end of my drinking, it was a constant 24/7. I'd even get up in the middle of the night to go pee, and I'd be drinking. And it was really bad. And, I have 5 siblings, my eldest sister being my best friend. She gave me an ultimatum when I was in my 20s, and she was having her only daughter, and she said, I love you so much. I just want you still in my life, but I need you to go to rehab, and you need to try to save yourself. And my aunt was also an alcoholic, and she had gone to rehab, and she had taken me to my first AA meeting. And I've been in and out of AA since I've been 23. I'm in my 40s now. And, My aunt would take me to meetings. I would go to meetings drunk. I fell down at a meeting drunk. I would slur my words, but of course, of all AA people, they didn't judge me at all. They just brushed me off and said, keep coming back. I got my first sponsor there, and she was in her 80s and I was in my 20s. And it blew my mind. She had almost 50 years of sobriety, just a blessed soul. And, sometimes you know, I didn't know if I'd be able to relate to her or not and didn't really want to open up to her. I just knew I had a problem. So my aunt had gone to rehab, and my aunt had been taking me to AA meetings, and she was about 5 years sober at that time. And she was really encouraged me about this place called Renaissance, downtown Toronto. Beautiful, beautiful facility, beautiful people that work there. I just didn't take it the way I should have. My family, it was a forced decision for me. I was going to get cut off from my sister, who was my best friend, still is my best friend. And, I wanted nothing more than to keep having her in my life. So I went to rehab. And, well, let's say within 3 weeks of getting out of Renaissance, I was back to drinking again. I slowly started losing friends. I couldn't, the only jobs I would be able to get were, I'd even get fired from the bar jobs. So towards the end there, I was just working factory jobs and, just still drinking at work. It was horrible. You know, the drinking took over everything. When I met my husband, well, he's not my husband, but we've been together for 16 years, so I call him my husband. When I met my husband when we were about 27, it's when I moved out to Peterborough area, Coburg area. We were drinking buddies. I had my on and offs. I would get sober for 3 months, and then I'd be off, and then I get sober for 3 months. And then when I met him, I was sober for a couple months. And he was living in a party house, and I ended up drinking again. And we became drinking buddies and partners. And so every day was a drinking fest, and more so me. He was actually able to get up in the morning and go to work and not drink. And then one day he got pancreatitis. He slipped into a coma for a month, and life got really lifey. My drinking had absolutely exploded. They told me he was going to die. I didn't know what to do. His kidneys failed. So many things are going wrong with him. And he's bounced back. He'll never be 100%, but the doctor said he was going to die. And for some miracle, he's still alive. And I'm very grateful for that. But it was about a 2, 3 year process for him to get better. He was my drinking buddy. So he couldn't drink during this time. And so, I would go cause all sorts of trouble while he was at home trying to get that together, get healthy again. And I just didn't care because nothing else mattered to me but drinking. So one time he was at Sunnybrook Hospital and he's having this big major surgery. And what I did every time I came to the hospital to visit him, which was every day, is I'd have at least a Mickey of vodka before I went into the hospital. So I was always slurring my words. I was always, stinking alcohol. Not just, you could really smell that in a hospital. And anyways, I just didn't care because, I had no care in the world. So I was leaving the hospital. I ended up drinking another half of a new Mickey I had, and then I had another bottle too. And I ended up drinking most of it. And I got behind the wheel and I started to drive down Bridle Path. And what happened? I got in a major car accident and cops are coming. The most important thing to me in that car accident was grabbing my full bottle of vodka and putting it into my purse because I knew when I get out of jail, at least I have some vodka to ease my pain. Well, they threw me in. I was charged and thrown in jail. My parents, my dad and my stepmom later on said, why wouldn't I call them? And they would have come and got me. And I wouldn't have had to sit there for so long. And I'm thinking in the back of my head, because they would have dumped my bottle of vodka and tried to shove me back into rehab again. So I would just, hide as much as possible. The drinking just got really worse. There was tons of hospital visits, lots of blackouts. I was at the point where I'd be falling down blackout drunk every day. I knocked myself unconscious many times. There's been times I came home with a hospital bracelet on, not even knowing where I was. And husband would drive me back. And the moment I got in the door, cutting off the hospital bracelet, I'd be chugging some vodka, thinking that he doesn't see me, and around the corner, there he is looking at me, giving me the dirtiest of looks. He had he'd gotten himself somewhat back together, and I was just still like a complete mess. It came to time where it was just 2021, just the pandemic was calming down, and he took early retirement because because of what happened to him. He was able to go back to work and finish off the couple more years that he had before he was able to take early retirement at 55. And he's originally from Nova Scotia, and he told me, like, he had 10 acres out has 10 acres out here, and he said, "Do you wanna come out to do you wanna go to Nova Scotia?" And I was like, "You know what? Great." And it was because I was running away from everything, I can run away from all my problems, run away from everything, and I'll go out to Nova Scotia. So I came out to Nova Scotia, and it was great. We had an Airbnb for 8 months while we were thinking about building, but instead of building, he gave me this idea, and he's like, "Would you wanna live off grid?" And I was like, "Off grid?" And I went off and I seen it. I'm like, well, I have certain stipulations. Gotta have Wi-Fi, gotta have a regular fridge, I need shower, and I need a washer and dryer. Is that gonna work in this off-grid situation? Because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And he's like, "Yeah, it will." And I was thinking, I looking around, I'm like, "This is great. I could get drunk anywhere and nobody will find me. This is amazing. I could get fall down drunk and nobody and I could scream and nobody will hear me or see me. So this is great." So we ended up buying the 36 acres off grid, and I moved to the tower I'm in right now. It's in Cape Breton. It's absolutely gorgeous. And I ended up meeting a couple people out here, and one of them became my drinking buddy. And, things did not get better at all. I ended up getting another I almost got another DUI. I hit somebody on Halloween, and she had kids in the car. And what did I do? I jumped in the car and I took off, and I went up the mountain. Well, it's a small town, so people had an idea, but they're like, "She lives up in the mountain. She doesn't have I don't have a civic address, so you can't exactly find me that." So I avoided the cops for that night. But let me tell you, 3 RCMP officers' cars came up the next morning to give what was given to me, and I had to pay the piper. It is what it is. I had lost my license before, and I was driving around with a learner's permit, and here I am drinking and driving, hitting somebody and taking off, and all I have is a learner's permit. So, of course, I got in trouble again. So I was like, "Okay, this time I'm gonna try to do things a little bit differently. I'll just wait." And then all of a sudden it was, my drinking was just really bad, really bad. I had my own business, and I almost lost my own business because I was too drunk most of the time to deal with it. And with my business, I'm a cleaner. I have Airbnbs, so you have to deal with it on a certain time date. It needs to be finished. And I was struggling to get that done. I even passed out one time at a B&B because I was drinking my face off. And so, anyways, January 2nd, 2024 is my sobriety date. I ended up going out for New Year's on January 31st, 2023, and I don't know what happened. It was a blackout of all blackouts, but I woke up, and from my grandma passing, I had her earrings and I had lost them. And my grandma was my best friend, and they were the only things that meant the world to me, and I couldn't find them. So, but I was so sick, and I was so sick. And normally when I was that sick, I would go take a drink of the bottle. And something is just like, no, I can't do this. So I ended up just not drinking. And it was 3 or 4, maybe a week days or maybe 7 days of just absolute hell. I thought I had a really bad cold. I didn't realize I was detoxing off of severe alcohol. I was so bad that I had the shakes all the time. Like, before I quit drinking, I'd have the shakes every morning until I got a drink into me. And so the detox was really bad. I should have been at a detox center, but I was at home instead. And, I was stubborn. I'm a stubborn SOB. I heard somebody say in a meeting before, I know everything. And that's how I actually related to somebody. He's like, I know everything. I know I can fix everything. I know, but really I didn't. So my first year of being sober, because I had gone to rehab and because I was in and out of AA so much, I decided that I knew what was best for me and I'm not going to go to AA. I'm just going to do this completely on my own. Well, I was completely miserable for those 11 and a half months it took me to get to a meeting. And the only reason why I went to a meeting, because my friend up here, my first friend that I met here, my drinking buddy, she had seen what I had done and she couldn't believe that I was sober. And another one of my friends up here had gotten sober just a little bit before I did. And I was kind of curious already about it. So when I got sober, did have conversations with my friend, the one friend that was already sober. And this other friend that was just thinking of wanting to get sober, she put herself into detox. And then so on my 1 year, hadn't gone to the group. I only went to the group once and I didn't say anything else. But on my exact date, January 2nd, 2025, my girlfriend came and got her desire chip and I got my 1 year chip. And that's when things started to change for me. I was going to meetings more regularly, but I wasn't working with a sponsor because, I knew everything. I can deal with this on my own. Meetings are great, and that's all I need is meetings. Well, that was far from the case. I was going through a lot in 2025, and I didn't know I had Graves' disease. Now, Graves' disease is a thyroid thing, and it affects especially when 1 in 4 women get it. Women, the bulging eyes. It's a lot of hormonal things, and I have a hyperthyroid, and I didn't realize that at the time. So everything was so intense and extreme for me in 2025, and I was just taking things to the absolute max. And in March, I had a nervous breakdown and I thought, oh my God, I'll just drink. That's it. So what have I been sober for 1 year and 4 months? So what? I'll just drink. Because I wasn't working with a sponsor in my first year, I had a bottle of vodka and a bottle of rye in my cupboard for the just in case moments if I fail. So it's like a security was in the back of my head that, if I fail, I've got a bottle in my cupboard at any point in time. If I get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, I can go get that drink if I needed it. And that was kind of my reassurance. But it was kind of my downfall in the March of 2025 because I had the bottle, I opened it and I put it to my lips. And then something just came over me. And I was like, Heather, you've gone this far. I had never, ever made it past 3 months being sober. I'm saying 3 months, and I'm being nice to myself. You know, 20 years of this, it was just brutal. And I was like, I can't do this. And my aunt had always been in my corner, and my aunt had always told me certain things. Like, my aunt was never my sponsor, she was my mentor. I call it the old school AA because she had 21 years pretty much in of sobriety. And she told me when you're feeling ungrateful or you need to get down on your hands and knees and you need to pray and be grateful that you're alive and you have just what you have. She taught me that when she got out of rehab, her sponsor made her write down like 1,000 times, I am worthy. I am worthy. And when she was telling me this stuff, I never really thought about it. It's just another seed that was planted in my head. Little did I find out later, it was a tool in my toolbox, and this toolbox was invented 20 years ago. And by going to rehab and everything else, I just put these tools in a toolbox and closed the lid on them and let them get all dusty. So in March, I got down on my hands and knees last year and I was like, dear God, please, I don't want to do this anymore. That the next day I went to an AA meeting and that's when I got a sponsor. And I didn't think Zoom would work for me. I was like, what the hell is Zoom? I was because I went to AA meetings and they were all in person. What my aunt did was telling me 90 and 90. The reason why I didn't want to do 90 and 90 is because I didn't want to travel all over the place to do meetings. In Toronto, it's a lot easier and a little bit more accessible than living in the country in the middle of nowhere. But anyways, but that was just an excuse too. And so I dove into the online Zoom meetings and I started doing my 90 and 90. I started working a program and it's the best thing I've ever done for myself. And it's a gift to myself that nobody can take away from me. On my on January 2nd, for the last 2 years, I cried like a baby because I am so proud of myself. I didn't think it was ever possible to get sober, and I didn't even think I would be able to stay sober. But no, I got sober and I did it, and it's all on me. And that feeling that you have, nobody can take that from you except for yourself. And so I've just been working hard lately. A lot of things have happened to me in the 2 years of getting sober, but a lot of really good things have come of it. My sponsor she introduced me to what codependency is. I had no idea how codependent I was. You got to read that book. I'm telling you, you'll just see all sorts of things that you're just screen out as a screaming codependency. And I had no clue. And just my sponsor and I went through the 12 steps the women's way. For the women out there, that was just a softer, easier way for me to get through to do it. And then we did the 164 pages in the big book. And, I'm just really working with my sponsor one on one. And we did the women's way in a group. The group was great because I got to get to know a bunch of women and I got to know a bunch of women that live around in my area. So in my area, it's all back country. People talk. Like literally in one of the areas that's an AA meeting, people in town will go through the church just to see who's at the AA meeting. So it was hard for me with the whole anonymity thing too. So, but it was something I was able to work on for myself. But having these group of women out here has just been remarkable. And just getting to know them and having a family out here that's my chosen family. And then most of them are AA people. I didn't think I'd be moving to the East Coast to get sober. Like, I just didn't think that was possible. I thought the East Coast was all about drinking vibes and music and having fun. But now I've learned I was actually able to go on vacation with my husband and not drink and have a really good time. I didn't think that was possible. I didn't think so many things were possible until I started to do it for myself. This year has been probably one of the hardest for me so far. That aunt that I was telling you about, she died of lung cancer in January. She was everything to me, especially when it came to my sobriety. She was the one person I can call and she would give me the answer, the mic drop answer, she'll just give it to me raw and just my sponsor, this is another thing. So my sponsor, when I got her, she was 29. And I'm like, what the hell am I going to learn from a 29-year-old woman? I'm like, all right, let's give her a go. She's got like 5 years. She's got almost 6 years in her. I'm like, okay, I'll give her a go. Well, she's 30 now and she's going on like 7 years. And let me tell you, I learn a lot from her all the time. It just blows me away how amazing her sobriety is and her program is. And, of course, it's just judging people before you even get to know or figure it out, right? And losing my aunt has literally been really hard on me. And then 2 weeks ago, I lost a mother figure. And so dealing with all this death this year, it's been really hard. But one thing I'm so grateful for is that drinking never crossed my mind. I didn't think that was possible. I didn't think that such bad things can happen and I just didn't want to drink. And one thing I've been finding really powerful is my international meeting. So instead of just bottling my feelings, I went and I've been making myself share on these international meetings. It's really intimidating. There's 75 to 300 people. And when I share, I take my camera off and I'll go raw. If I'm you're going to catch that's who I am. I'm blunt. I'll tell you how it is. I'm an open book. I've learned to have a filter now that I'm sober, so I'm a bit nicer. And when I was started to share, I cried because I can't hide how I feel. And these people in the international meeting, I'm like from New Zealand to Germany to South Africa to England, they stopped and they changed the subject without even saying they were changing the subject. And everybody started talking about loss. And it was just remarkable hearing people from around the world share their experience and strength and hope of getting through things. It just really hit me, their stories, very powerful. And it made my pity party, pour me, pour me, pour me another drink go away. It wasn't a pour me another drink. It was just a bunch of emotions. And it's been really good to be able to talk about my feelings right now instead of drinking them away. It's just so funny. My belly button birthday is coming up next week, and I turned around to my husband, and this hasn't I dealt with death and dealing with death, and then this didn't pop up into my brain, but right away it popped up into my brain is, "Oh, my husband's gonna be lobster fishing on the day on my birthday. Oh, no one's gonna be home. I could get drunk." I'm like, "Where the hell did that come from?" I'm 2 years, 4 months sober, and where did that thought come from? Well, it comes from just being an alcoholic. You're gonna get these dirty thoughts. I heard, like, somebody with 20 years, 15 years, like 30 years, the dirty thoughts come into their brain too. But that's what it is. It's a disease. We're alcoholics. It's gonna come back and creep up on us when we least expect it. Something that you think that's really gonna destroy you, and you make it through. It could be the easiest thing, and that's where it gets you. So, what I've really learned to do is start talking more about what I'm going through, start talking about my feelings, and start taking more action in my life. One thing I'm really focused on right now is keeping my side of the street clean, minding my own business and nobody else's business. I have siblings that are into their addictions. One of my sisters a substance abuse problem. And just 2 days ago, she called and asked for some money. She has no cosigner for her place because she's getting evicted. And I said no. Normally, I'm like the people pleasing, wanted to come save you, but I'm not being a codependent person like that. I am just keeping my side of the street clean, and that's it. Unfortunately, she's going to have to learn, and she's going to have to learn her own way. And that was hard for me to be able to say, no, I'm not going to come save you. I'm not going to do this for you. And that's just something that I've been able to have now, well, learning how to do is to have boundaries and set these boundaries and keep to these boundaries, which is still, it's really hard. I'll never be perfect. I'm not aiming for perfect. And, the book says we don't have to be perfect. We just try to be a better person. And that's all I try to do. Service is vital. I didn't, my first sponsor always told me, just don't stand there. Move some chairs or something at the end of the meeting, or go greet somebody, or go clean up, or go change your garbage, or go help out. And she also taught me too that when you go to a meeting and it's not your home group, you go up to the chair, you introduce yourself, and you ask if there's anything that you can do to help out, because that's what we do. And to freely give back what was given to us, we have to give as much as we can. And I don't sponsor I haven't sponsored anybody, and I'm kind of scared about sponsoring somebody, but my sponsor and I are working on that. And it's a big responsibility, but I also want to give back freely what has been given to me. So a lot of these women in my women's group, we're in big contact. Heather on this group was one of those women. When I was in Toronto, I went to a meeting, and long and behold, I met Heather. And I was just starting a women's group, and then I was like, "Hey, you want to be part of this women's group? Well, here's my number." Well, we just ended up keeping in contact, and all these people through these contacts has just been amazing. At my aunt's celebration of life, when I was there in March for her celebration of life, a couple people came up to me, and I had to shake my head. Longing to hold, there's the people from 20 years ago at my first AA meetings the people that belonged to my aunt's home group showed up for her celebration of life. And what did they do? They embraced me. They loved me. One of the guys was celebrating 35 years, and he's like, "We're the Willowdale Shepherd group now. Come here." And it was just so amazing. One of the guys I used to bartend with back in the day found out that I was sober. I got to see I went to a meeting with him. A lady that's on my home group in Inverness, she lives in Toronto, so I went and visit her. If it wasn't for these AA people when I was in Toronto dealing with what I had to deal with, I would have lost my mind. But because I know I have another family that's not my blood family, and everybody in AA is truly looking out for you. They just really want to help you. And I had to embrace that somebody's not coming out to try to get me, that they're just wanting to help me. I don't know what I would have done without having these people in Toronto when I was there. It was really important that Heather and I got to go to a meeting. You know, the celebration of life was beautiful because not only did I meet some people, but there was a lady that used to work at the Renaissance with my aunt. And of course, my aunt worked there. And she remembered me. She didn't remember my name, but she remembered my face. And then my aunt's old sponsor gave me her phone number and said, if I need somebody, give her a call. And with all these things going on in my life right now, it's just so grateful to be sober. I haven't had a healthy relationship in my life. I'm working on that one with my husband right now. I haven't had a healthy relationship with not even myself, to give myself the ability to say things. I am working on an eating disorder. It could be disordered eating or anyways, that's something that I'm working on with my sponsor. But things I want to recognize and see, and I'm okay to talk about, and I want to work on it and try to be better. I would get annoyed when I hear people say they're recovered alcoholic. I'll never be recovered. I'm always going to be recovering. But then there's another meaning behind the recovered. They're recovered from the thought. It's like I said, I'm not perfect. I'm a work in progress, and it's always going to be that way. But I don't know I can't begin to tell you how grateful I am for AA. It has saved my life. It was in and out of the program for 20 years. I thought it was just, when I first went, I thought it was the guy with the bag and the bottle, and the homeless guy that drinks. But no, there's regular people and, doctors, lawyers, cashiers, anybody is so many people that are alcoholics, and we all coming together in AA has really helped me with all the just meeting different people and being able to get an experience strengthened from there. Yeah, I think that's it's pretty much what I got. I live today, like I said, I live off grid. I'm in the Cape Breton Highlands. Life is very different. It's not Toronto where there's streetcars, subways, and buses. My neighbors are moose and bears. I have to snowmobile down in the wintertime, because I can't access my house with a regular car in the winter. Things are different. But I'm so grateful and I'm so happy. And yeah, I think that's what I got. Heather, thank you. And everyone, thank you so much for asking me to speak. And I really appreciate it. And I wish everyone another 24.
Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to enjoy a shot glass of recovery. If you'd like to help support the show, you can make a voluntary contribution through PayPal at A Shot Glass of Recovery. Every donation, no matter the amount, helps cover the costs of producing the podcast and allows us to keep sharing stories of hope and recovery. Thanks again for your support. It truly means a lot.
Everything you do, the answer lies inside you.